I just finished recording that entire intro and then I realized that I never clicked the button. Take two! Hey everyone, it is Amy from Curious Papaya, and today I have a brand new free tutorial for you, and that is my Granny Circle Bauble. For my color palette, I decided to go with some earthy neutrals, so lots of creams, tans, and browns, and then I also chose some accent colors like dark green and burnt orange to provide some of that richness and depth. Of course, you can choose whatever color palette you'd like to, and this was definitely a challenge for me to break away from my normal bright pastels and everything. I just feel like these will make the perfect gift. They definitely give off a very high-end quality type feel, something you might find in Pottery Barn or West Elm. As always, I like to sprinkle in tips and tricks for crocheting to help you in your crocheting journey. So let's go ahead and get started. For the materials, you can use any number 4 medium worsted weight yarn. Here I am using the brand Loops and Threads, and I grabbed 4 different colors to work with. I am going for this earthy kind of tone, as I mentioned previously. Of course, you can go with soft pastels. You can even go with deeper reds and deeper greens for that classic Christmas color palette. You'll need a 3.25 millimeter hook. Here I am using my Clover Amour hook, and I absolutely love how the yarn slides on the shaft. And I'm also using a bent tip needle from Clover as well as the mini patchwork scissors. Lastly, I picked up some velvet ribbon, and I chose the thickness 3/8 of an inch. I thought this was the perfect width for the handles, but of course you can modify it as you would like. So I went ahead and created 1/2 of our project, and so I'm going to leave this on the side so I can refer to it when grabbing the colors I need. We're going to be starting in the center with this creamish color. This is kind of like a heatherish tweed as well. So it's got these pretty specks of light orange and light brown in it. All right, and let's get started with round 1. So don't mind my little band-aid here. I just wanted to cover up a little accident and to prevent you from having to stare at it the whole time. So we're going to be using what we refer to as color 1. That's going to be our center color right over here. I am going to start with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 6. So tighten that around your hook and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to slip stitch into the first chain to create a loop. So grab this, and there is our slip stitch. You can kind of weave the shorter tail over to the other side as well. So for the first round, we're going to make sure to work into the inside of the ring, not into the stitches here. Okay, so first we're going to chain 2, and that is going to count as our first double crochet. Then we're going to make 2 more double crochets. Here's 1, and here is 2. So these 3 together are considered our first cluster, and we're going to make 4 more clusters for a total of 5. Chain 1, and that'll be like the little space between each of our clusters, and we're going to do 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to grab more of my working yarn here. Okay, chain 1 and continue the process. 1, 2, and 3. So now we have 3 clusters here. Okay, chain 1. Got 2 more to go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another chain to separate that, and our last cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Excellent. Okay, now we're going to chain one last one. We're going to slip stitch into the top of the first stitch, which remember was made up of 2 chains. So this is the first one, and this would be the second one. So I'm just going to go into that back loop, if you will, slip stitch, and pull up a short tail. Okay. Total, you will have 15 stitches and 5 chain stitches. Lastly, you're going to want to pull on that little tail in the back to close up any gap that you might have. A little one is fine. Now we're going to join color 2, which in my example is this dark green. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a loose slip knot. And we're going to be joining it into one of the chain spaces that is opposite of where we fastened off here. So if I'm stretching this out, like right here in this chain space would be perfect. I'm going to pull up the new color. And the reason why we're joining on the opposite side is because we're going to want to crochet over these tails right here. Okay, so I'm holding on to the short little tail of color 2 behind my work. Now we're going to chain 2, which again is going to count as our first double crochet. I can kind of tighten up on that short little tail behind, and that way that little slip knot will not be visible on the right side of the piece. Okay, we're going to make 2 double crochets into this chain space, going over that short little tail in the back. So here's 1 and 2. Then we're going to chain 1, and you notice this is one cluster made up of 3 double crochet stitches. Now we're going to make another 3 double crochet stitches in the same chain space. So yarn over and let's create 3 more. 2 and 3. This is considered a double cluster, and we're actually going to make 4 more double clusters around the piece for a total of 5 double clusters. So go ahead and chain 1, and we're going to do that again in the next chain space. So make 3 double crochet stitches, and I'm just picking up that short tail still behind my piece. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And then we're going to make another 3 double crochet stitches in the same spot. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now that we have crocheted over the short yarn tail for about 1/3 of the way through the piece, we can let go of that. And then we're going to crochet over the little tail we left behind from color 1. So chain 1, create your next double cluster in the next chain space. I'm holding that short little tail behind my piece again. So 3 double crochet stitches. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and another 3 in the same chain space. 1, 2, and 3. Pull up more yarn. Okay, chain 1, and let's work into the next space. You might have to stretch apart your piece a little bit, as I am, just to see where that chain space is. So again, 3 double crochet stitches, chain 1, and another 3 in the same chain space. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1. Now onto our last double cluster here. So double crochet into that gap. That's 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, and again 1, 2, and 3. All right, chain 1, and we're going to join that to the top of the first stitch, which again was made up of 2 chain stitches. So if this is our first one, which you can see with the V shape, this would be the second one, or the top of the first stitch. So slip stitch into that, and you'll notice this pattern all throughout the pattern. Leave a short little tail that we will crochet over in the next round. Total, this is going to give us 30 stitches and 10 chain stitches. For round 3, we're going to be joining a new color. This is what we will call color number 3. So once again, I am going to make a loose slip knot with a short little yarn tail that we will crochet over. And then we're going to join it in the opposite side of where we fastened off. So that would be right over here. And if I'm sticking my hook through that gap, I'm going to pull up the new color through just like so and crochet over this short little tail behind us. So for round 3, we're going to chain 2, which again is going to count as our first double crochet stitch. Then we're going to make 2 double crochets. So let's make that right now. 1, 2. And you see we've got a cluster here. And we're actually going to chain 1 and work in every chain space around in this round. So holding this short yarn tail, the next chain space would be right over here. So I'm going to go around that and create another 3 double crochet stitches. Okay, chain 1 and then work into the next chain space right over here. One, 2, and 3. Okay, chain 1. And again, 1, 2, and 3. Pull some more working yarn. Okay, and you can see that I have crocheted over this short yarn tail over the span of 4 different clusters, so that is nice and secure. We can drop that. Now we're going to crochet over the previous round's color right here, just as we have been doing. Okay, so chain 1, go into the next chain space right over here, and we'll continue doing that all the way around. So what is happening here is we're not adding any increases. So now the piece is going to start to round out on the sides rather than continuing in a flat pattern. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it snug and tight when we insert the ornament. Okay, another 3 double crochet stitches for our cluster. Chain 1, moving on to the next cluster. You can start to see the edge want to curl inwards. We're just going to push that outwards. Chain 1 into the next chain space here. Chain 1. Here's our next cluster. And our very last one. All right, chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch into that first stitch. So again, look for the first chain and look for the second chain. We're going to slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet. Pull up a short tail once again, and we are already on our last color. Now, because we didn't do any increases, the stitch counts are all the same. So next, let's go ahead and make a slip knot in our color 4. And for me, this is this light green color. And I'm going to be joining it across from where I fastened off. So somewhere over here would be great. You can join in any stitch because this round, we're just going to be double crocheting in every stitch around. So here I am holding the short yarn tail once again, chain 2 here. There we go. And then we're going to work in every single stitch around, including all of the chain spaces. So holding on to that crochet tail to work over, we're going to do that. And this is really going to make that cup shape nice and defined. Into the chain space and continue all around. So while we are just working double crochet stitches all the way around, I will share some modification tips in case you are working with smaller baubles, or maybe if your yarn is a little bit thicker or thinner, whatever it may be. Everyone's tension is different, so even if you're using a hook size that is slightly different from what I am using here, you might end up with a piece that is a very different dimension. If you need to add an extra round of double crocheting all around because your piece might be too small, for instance, go ahead and do that. Or you can even do a round of single crochets or half double crochets to match that width that you need. The most fun part for me when I was making my collection of the 6 baubles was putting the colors together, of course. I wanted to do something I haven't done before, and usually if you're familiar with my work, I tend to lean towards colorful pastels, but I really wanted to try something that would challenge my brain. And to me, that was working with like neutrals, earthy colors, and still keeping it really festive. This kind of gives me more of like Pottery Barn / West Elm kind of vibes when it comes to home decor versus my usual style, which is like Urban Outfitters or something like that, right? So that's the nice thing, that you can customize it however you would like. We're coming around to where we started. So what we're going to do is find the top of that first double crochet stitch. I'm counting the first chain and the second right there. And I'm going to slip stitch into that and leave a short tail. Now, if we're looking at the back side of our piece, we can see that we did a great job crocheting over our tails. And what you can do is go ahead and snip them short because we have crocheted over them for the length of like half of the piece. So they're nice and snug already. Set your scraps to the side. You can repurpose them for stuffing your amigurumi pieces. Okay, let's move on to assembly. For assembly, we're going to pick up color 1 once again. I'm going to cut off about 2 feet of length here. And I'm going to use my darning needle to thread that yarn tail. What this is going to do is create a really pretty contrasted seam like this. Now, I did experiment with one of the baubles and I used a light color to kind of sew the 2 pieces together. And though it is pretty, I think I prefer more of a contrast. So it really is your personal preference on what you want to do. So we're going to hold our 2 pieces together with the fastened off yarn tails facing the same direction. And then I'm just going to go into the piece and maybe weave in the inside of the stitches here just so I have a little bit of security. Let me center myself here. And we're going to come out right next to where we fastened off, like so. And make sure to leave about a 3-inch tail to work with at the end. Okay, these yarn tails will not be used for anything, so we can just hold them on the inside of the piece. And we're going to go ahead and whip stitch all the way around, going through both loops of both halves. Okay, so at one point it will look something like this. Okay. We're going to go all the way around. Now another option is you could mattress stitch these 2 halves closed as well. You can really modify it however you would like. I do find that this bent tip metal needle, always a mouthful to say, is really, really handy when working into stitches like this, because I don't have to kind of like weave and dig my way through. The lifted tip really does help a lot. Okay, Now, before you continue all the way through, you can take a look at how that seam looks on your piece. If you're not happy with it, it's not too late to switch it out. Maybe try color 2 or even color 3 for the seam instead, if you feel like that's too contrasted. I feel like this would be so fun to make in like neon yellow and like bright, bright, bright colors as well. Totally different feel, but that's whatever gets you into the festive mood, right? Okay, we're gonna keep doing this until we're about halfway or so, which we're coming up on pretty soon. Okay. It doesn't have to be exact. We just want to create a little bit of a pocket. And that is going to hold our ornament insert exactly where we want it to be. Okay, so I have my ornament insert here, and then I'm going to fit it around my 2 pieces. Now you want it to be kind of snug. If your insert is too small, then you'll see that your piece is very baggy and it's not the look we're going for. So make sure that you always check before you keep on going. You might need to modify it, as I said, because you might be upcycling some old ornaments that you've already had on hand. But for myself personally, I went out and bought these. They were super cheap on sale right now for the holiday season. So they were pretty affordable for me. Okay, weave over these. We're going to push the insert all the way to the side and keep on working. I wonder if you can see my reflection in this. You're gonna get like the loveliest angle of me. Okay, so for the little handle right here, that's gonna span about 3 stitches on top and bottom, so we're gonna leave those unworked. But here's where we're going to weave in some of our tails to make sure that they are not visible. And we are finished. Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum. I'm gonna go into that same stitch right here, actually. Cool. Okay, now we're gonna weave somewhere off to the side of our piece here. Okay. And I really want to secure these yarn tails so that they are not popping out everywhere. So I'm gonna use my needle and weave out to where the other yarn tail was. Okay, secure this into a knot. Okay, and now I'm going to use my scissors, just fasten those 2 off. And I'm using my hook here just to kind of bury them in the inside of the piece. Okay, and now our beautiful, beautiful bauble is finished. So now we are going to add the little handle here. And I personally like this texture a lot more than like the satiny kind of finish. So what I'm gonna do is think about how long I want my handle to be. Maybe that's about 3 inches or so on both ends. So I'm gonna cut my length like so. Let's weave it through the little metal ring here. And then I am going to glue the 2 ends like so. Okay, we will have to let that dry, and once it does, we can go ahead and flip the handle over so that the part where we attached it isn't visible. We'll rotate it all the way down to the bottom like this. All right, I'm still holding it in place because it does need to dry a bit, but there you have it. We have finished our easy granny circle ornament. Well, everyone, that is the end of this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to tag me with your creations over on social media. Let me know what other kinds of tutorials you would like to see next, and I'll see you next time. Bye!